So first, I'm really happy to be here in Bogotá with Bogotá's fireplaces. I was here 10 years ago, and I was working on a proposal for the Rio Magdalena, and I fell in love with everything Colombiano, with the people, the fruit juices, the football, and of course the fireplaces. So I love that this is a Hearth Summit in Bogotá, and I'm so happy to be here. A little bit about me. So I am a water engineer by training, worked most of my career doing big water projects. And I then moved into management and moved my way up to be a corporate executive at a big engineering firm. I've worked all over the world, about half my life in Latin America, so I was very happy to come for this conference. And when after I worked in engineering, I left engineering and I ran a nonprofit, also in water, called Water for People. And then I ran another nonprofit called B-Lab. And that was my switch from water to economic systems change. And in all of these journeys, I really wanted to be a more heart-centered leader. Oh, I also was on many boards and still serve on boards, but I really was working on my heart and being a better leader and driven by my heart. So in 2011, while I was still at the engineering firm, I got this assignment of my life. I got to go to Rio and work on the Olympics. And my husband was the stay-at-home parent, and two boys at the time were 11 and 6. And we had moved various times for my work. I get a contract for a big project. We'd move for 2, 3, 4. This was a 5-year assignment. We were so excited, it couldn't be happier. We really wanted our kids to learn other cultures and languages, and this was a dream. Until my older son, the 11-year-old, he didn't really want to move again. He was getting tired of this. We were living in Colorado, he was happy, and we got to Rio. He didn't like the school, he had a hard time making friends, he was very shy, and he got depressed. And this was really scary as a family. We didn't know how to deal with this. And we left. So 5 years turned into 2, and we went back to Colorado. And then I was depressed. Like, I didn't want to be in Colorado. I wanted to be in Rio with the Olympics. It was amazing. And my son and I were struggling. So I thought, we'll go back to Colorado, everything will be great. It wasn't great. He had a hard time readapting, and he continued to be very mad at me. He would say, the worst thing in my life is your job. It ruined my life. And it was really hard. And I was angry because I wanted to be somewhere else. And I thought, Rio was great. What's wrong with you? So this didn't get better over time. And so I decided I needed to do something about it. So I signed up for the Well-Being Project that we just heard about. I was one of the 112 who was in one of the cohorts. And I didn't really know what I was signing up for. It came as an invitation to social innovators. I was the CEO of Water for People at the time, and I just felt a calling. I need to do this. I need to figure out my own stuff with my son. And I was also, frankly, struggling to be CEO of a nonprofit. I was really good, trained engineering executive, formal, directive, keep my distance from my employees, just do your work, head down. But I wasn't like that at Water for People. It was very passionate. We were solving the global water crisis. And oh my gosh, of course we have to talk about everything. And everyone wanted to be engaged, and it was hard for me. So when I entered the program, I said I really wanted to work on being more approachable. So these 20 people plus these directors became, and still are, some of my best friends. They know things about me that I didn't even know, that I learned because we supported each other. We went through our fears of failures, our traumas, our things in our life. We unpacked them, we learned skills, we learned practices that changed our lives, it changed my life. And so my big challenge to self was, how do I unlock my heart? How do I become that more approachable mother for my son and for my employees? I want to be that person, but I don't those skills, so I had to learn them. So, joined the program in 2019, and then fast forward to 2020, COVID hits, and oh my gosh, you know, none of us knew what to do. Actually, I want to be on this black one. So, it was also a blessing, because all of a sudden we got to talk about mental health, right? No one talked about that. I never talked about that. It was taboo. But then we had, mental health was like physical health. We all need to take care of our mental health. We had mental health days. And then, you know, things got a little out of hand sometimes when we'd have a big deadline and, you know, all of a sudden some people who were working on it needed a mental health day because they couldn't handle the stress of turning it in. They're like, oh, okay, well, I don't know about that. Or we'd open the space at work to talk about our challenges during COVID. And I was like, I don't know what to do, you know, are we gonna lose our funding? Are we gonna still exist? It was a scary time. And then people would go on and share everything about their personal life, and some of the colleagues would be like, okay, way too much information. We need to get back to work here. But overall, it was a really good experience. And what we also learned during COVID was that burnout was a thing, and it got bigger and bigger. It had been a thing, but not so much. But during COVID, burnout was everywhere. So we had this phenomena that we were distant and we were suffering. And these quick fixes weren't working. Yoga, Zoom, I don't know who did that, I did that. COVID puppies, yes, I have one of those. And what happened during COVID was some really great research out of Oxford. It's that workplace stress always existed, but COVID exacerbated it. The distance from the workplace created loneliness and disconnection. And that started creating this burnout more and more. And then we know now there's lots of data that the wellness apps and the resilience training wasn't solving and isn't solving burnout. But there's a great book by Leiter and Maslow called The Truth About Burnout. And what they say is that burnout is caused by the failure of the workplace, not of the worker. And the reasons there's this disconnect is because of a mismatch. And this mismatch is totally in control of management. So if we look at the mismatch, as things get too stretched out, workers don't feel like they can contribute to decisions, feel like people are not being treated equally, they don't have their community, they don't have a best friend at work, either too much work, or no one's paying attention, they don't have enough. And this is a big thing because managers with remote employees need new skills. And that's an area of focus that we don't talk about much, but it's a whole different skill to build rapport and connection with someone who you don't see physically. People didn't feel like they were being recognized, they weren't getting rewarded, and they're like, my organization says we do X, Y, Z for our values, but I don't believe that, that's not what I see. So this mismatch was contributing to burnout. So what I decided to do was like, okay, I'm gonna start experimenting. I'm gonna start with these micro shifts because I'm learning about this. So we were in a strategic planning period, 2022-24, or 2021. So we had our goals on impact and growth, and I said, let's do a goal on people, and let's see what that would look like. So instead of saying, this is what the goal would be, it was kind of the old me, I said, why don't we set up a transformation committee and decide what we want for people? So the transformation committee decides that the goal is actually recruit, retain, and develop talent for now and the future. We also had this vision to 2030. So we said, okay, well, what does that mean? So they came up with these criteria. It's all about what is the staffing plan to 2030? What's my role? How do I develop as a professional? How can I be more included in decision making? How can we be more innovative as an organization? I want to know what salaries of my coworkers everywhere in the world and see if I'm being treated fairly, and I want more professional development. And we put those in the strategy. So an interesting part of this was 2021 again. So I had not told anyone I was doing the Wellbeing Project. I'm 2 years in. And it was because it was taboo. And I was embarrassed. I thought I was like, you know, a CEO. I had to like know everything. I had to answer every question. I had to like, be inspiring all the time. And my executive team, my leadership team, they knew I'd go to these social entrepreneur retreats, but they didn't know what I did. And so I started, they started asking me like, well, what are you doing? Because we really like these things you're doing. This is like not the same you as it was. And I started sharing, like, oh my gosh, you need to tell the employees what you're doing. And that it isn't just like you showed up with a better cup of coffee today. You're actually intentionally making changes in your leadership style. And it's not about you. You're not being selfish. It's benefiting us. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Okay. So then I started sharing more, which was what I wanted to do anyway, right? I wanted to have more proximity. So one thing I shared was about the 4 elements of well-being. Now, I had different 4, but some are the same here. So for me, physical is really important. I'm an avid cyclist. I need to exercise. If I don't get my exercise, I'm grumpy. My mental was about learning how to calm down, and I started meditating in the IDP program. I'm terrible, but I still try. But it's just cutting that chatter in my brain, like, stop talking, brain, like, just take a breath. And just being calmer was really hard, but good. Financial well-being. How much is enough? How much money do I need to make to be content and that I have enough for me and my family? And then I don't have to worry about that. And social for me is sort of social spiritual. I need to be with my friends, and spiritual for me is nature. I have to be in nature as much as I can, which actually is pretty possible in Colorado. So when I started sharing these things, guess what? So did my employees. And I started getting to know people I worked with for years on a whole different level. This is my leadership team, and we became really close. And then we became really supportive of each other. And I know things about their personal lives that I never knew for years. So it was a really interesting time for me because I was practicing things I was learning in real time, and I was being very intentional, and I was being more patient, and I was having more perseverance. And what the end result was, our employee engagement was really high. It was over 90%. And I'm super proud of that. But it was hard work, but worth it. So now just speaking of employee engagement, there's a whole range, right? 0 to 100. And when, this was talked about a little bit by the panel, when you have a polarity that's too far to one end, but let's say too far to the end where you have the people who quit but didn't leave yet, or those disruptors who are just complaining, and you start spending all your time as a leadership team on them, well, you're forgetting all these high performers over here and all the good and well-engaged people. So it's trying to, that's really hard, that balance, right? Otherwise we would have figured it all out. Gallup has a data point that over 60% of employees in the world are disengaged. It's huge. So companies have figured this out. What have they done? Well, they're watching these workplace trends. They're keeping abreast of things that are happening. Workplace trends today are things like flexibility, things like wanting to work for companies or organizations that have impact, social, environmental, having that transparency in what's happening, be included in decision making. And one I read about last week that I think is really interesting out of Cambridge University is, what does AI mean for us? Well, they've been doing a study about AI giving employees feedback. Employees find it more valuable because they think it's less biased than feedback from a human, their colleague or their supervisor. Like, imagine this. So we have AI now in our workplace. Maybe that's one of our best friends at work. Maybe that'll help us be more engaged. I think that's pretty interesting. So another part of this is, like, what is the culture then at the organization? So culture is in the air, right? We don't know how to define it, but we all feel it. And when you're in an organization with a positive culture, it feels really good. Smooth sailing, tailwinds, and you're like, this is awesome, I love this place. And then in that organization that we've probably all been part of, where it's like, everything's really hard, and you always feel like you have headwinds, and it's toxic, and you're like, this doesn't feel good. So how do you get to that good culture? Well, I think a good test is how to check the culture with a strategy. And this was also spoken a little bit about. What is the strategy? Is there a strategic goal for people? Let's say you have a culture of well-being. Are you investing in well-being for your employees? Are you investing in professional development? What does the CEO talk about? What do they do? What are the metrics for the executive team? And what are the metrics for the strategy? And if they're all aligned, they have pretty much our company that gets it. So these are some of these things that I think are really important for getting these aligned. Those senior leaders need to be held accountable. Has to be aligned with the strategy. Investment is there. You do seek employee input, because then there's buy-in. And you recognize successes. And you track and assess project progress. So, it works. Here's another interesting data point by Willis Towers Watson. Companies that get it have good well-being cultures, 8 times engagement, 2 times retention. Those are big numbers. And another interesting one is Great Place to Work. They've done a study about all the companies in the world. Highest flourishing data for employees is Africa, and second highest, Latin America. So you're actually ahead of most of the world here, besides Africa. And I wanted to highlight a few companies that I think really get it. So we have, of course, they're all B Corps, because I love B Corps, and they are required to have employee engagement. But these are Colombian companies that I picked, except for Natura & Co.'s Brazilian. Natura & Co. is really focused on the Amazon and climate. Casa Lucre, coffee, cocoa products, really known for inclusive decision-making and sustainable supply chain. Alcaria started out as dairy, but now into also other nutrition, but really into sustainable livestock. Grapes and Waffles, a model for women's economic empowerment. Most employees are women, many single mothers. Juan Valdez Coffee, a very traceable supply chain and a very strong corporate governance. So just to give you some flavor of some of the companies here that are really trying to be engaging. So the bottom line, I think, is that you can reduce burnout. It can go down if you focus on engagement and retention, and part of that is well-being of your employees. And this, to me, is a business imperative going forward. It's a part of future-proofing your company and getting ready for the future, because things are moving fast. They're going to keep moving faster. So connecting with your employees and understanding what they're feeling, this also brings about this sewing together of the fabric of your culture. Are you inspired? Like, one thing I love about B Corps is this, they're really inspiring, and people who work there are like, I'm super proud to work for a B Corp. Are you proud to work for your company or your organization? You feel part of the culture? Are you valued by your manager? Are you seen or you heard? Again, this is harder when you're remote. And can you be yourself? Do you feel a sense of belonging? So these are really important criteria. And of course, there's an ask of all of you here. So I wouldn't let you go without asking you to do something. So first of all, think about yourself and your own, where you are today. Are there things you would want to change about your own well-being? Things you want to do with your own life? And then if you think about yourself in the workplace, this was also in Rowena's a bit, if you think about yourself in your team and as a leader and as a colleague, how do you show up at work? And how do you affect those around you? And then lastly is the organization. If you are an employee and you want things, are you letting your voice be heard? Are you sharing what you believe and you feel that the company or the organization should do? And if you're in charge and if you're the boss out there, put your money where your mouth is in your decisions, where you think you should go, and you can change things. You have to be intentional, and you have to persevere, and you have to be patient, because culture change takes time. So in closing, what happened with my son, right? So he's 23 now. My younger son's 18. So with the Brazil years are still a sensitive topic, we have spent a lot of time reconciling. He knows I did a lot of work on this. We've forgiven each other for those times, and we grew to get closer together because of this trauma. But if I look at now the work I did with the Wellbeing Project, my husband says it's the best training I ever did. So thank you, Aaron, if you're out there, because I think he's right. It's really good for me and my family, but also for me as a leader. I just grew tremendously. And so now, at this phase of my life, I have my own company now, Catapult for Change. I'm searching my path as an entrepreneur. Now I can call myself an entrepreneur, not just a social entrepreneur, a business entrepreneur. I'm really picky about where I spend my time and what I do, because time is my scarcest resource. And one of the things I'm spending my time on is developing this program for businesses, building on the individual development program with the Wellbeing Project. I'm doing this with the Wellbeing Project and the OEP that we heard about today at the organizations. So if you're interested in this, please come talk to me. I'll be around all day today and tomorrow. I'm really excited about this. And so in closing, a few words from Paulo Coelho. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. Thank you. Gracias.